Hey, y'all. How are you doing? This is something I never do. I don't usually go live, especially at night, especially in my actual recording space. I don't even have my my stand to put my phone on, but I just wanted to come on here really quick because I had a thought and I want to tell y'all about it. I was going to film a podcast and my GarageBand wasn't working, so I'm like, you know what? I'm here. I'm dialed up. I'm getting ready to do it. I just got a new hand tattoo. Do y'all like it? Just got my nails done today too, so I'm feeling like I'm about to use my hands a lot. But anyway, I want to talk about our body being sacred. For some reason, I hit a new revelation about this sacredness of our body idea. And let me just preface this by saying I am not talking about your body is sacred, so cover it up. Your body is sacred, so don't show your titties. Your body is sacred, so don't, have multiple sex partners. Anything you think that I might be saying, just scratch that out of your mind. I'm not saying any of those normal talking points from weirdo conservatives or toxic evangelicals or purity culture or any of that. This is honestly more about like our literal actual body being sacred. So I heard a really powerful podcast today. It was an interview. I honestly don't even know the guy who was interviewing. It was one of those things, you know how YouTube just be knowing? They just be knowing. It came up on my feed and it was Gabriel Mate, who is a very famous author who talks a lot about the role of I actually have never read any of his books, but after this interview today, I was like, I'm going to get 2 of his books for sure, or going to listen to them or whatever. But anyway, but he was talking about today about the connection between, so he's a medical doctor, and he was talking about the connection between the mind and the body. If you've heard me talk before, you know I'm very intensely interested in neuroscience and the role that the brain plays. I read and study a lot of Dr. Joe Dispenza. I've been reading and studying even more people who are talking about this in terms of healing, particularly as a trauma survivor, as someone who's been through a lot of childhood trauma and then was in an abusive marriage. It's really, really, really something I'm intensely interested in because I still suffer some of the chronic pain, chronic illnesses of being through trauma. One of them that I've talked about on here before is I still have chest pains when I experience anxiety or have an anxiety attack. I still have like chest pains that actually hurt in my heart, which is really scary because, it feels like I'm having a heart attack. So there are just things like that I'm interested in. Anyway, what he said was he was talking about how much everything we think and believe, how it affects our body and our body chemistry. So he was talking a little bit about how, we've all said this before, like when you have a strong fight or flight response, you've probably heard this, if you see a bear, your body is going to do the things necessary to give you the strength to run from the bear. One is probably going to be adrenaline, but that's because your brain told you, right? So your brain told you, you can't involuntarily produce adrenaline. You can't say to your body, hey, could you produce some adrenaline? There's a bear. I'd really like to run. I need some superhuman strength. Like a car just fell on my child, which as we know happens. Anyway, let me get to the point. The point is that he was talking about how our bodies are, this is going to sound, forgive me for sounding repetitive because I feel like some of this stuff we know, but our bodies and our brain, it houses our soul in such a way that it deserves more protection than we give it. And for some reason that just crystallized in me. I was like literally in the bathtub washing my hair and I'm listening to this. And he was talking about how particularly the part of our body that houses our brain and what we let in our mind and how much our mind affects the way our body works. It affects our pain. It affects, everything. It affects everything. And we all know, I don't know if you've had this happen before where something that happens in your body that's not normal, like, I don't know, you break your arm or like even one time I broke my toe or just whatever. If you ever have any illness, whatever, and like those 5 or 6 days go by where you're feeling crappy, you think like, once I get out of this, I'm not going to take for granted my health anymore. I'm not going to take for granted my ability to use my fingers or my feet or whatever, because this has so inconvenienced me. And so he was talking about how when something happens in our body, in our mind, I should say, like, for example, I'm going to tell you a really fascinating story that I think really, really helped me think about this. It was about a guy he was doing construction. he jumped off jumped off the roof, not like a far distance, but like he jumped off far enough to like land on his feet, and and a nail went through his foot. And so he saw the nail go up through his boot, and he started screaming and writhing in pain. And people, he was like, there's a nail went through my boot. And so they took him to the hospital, whatever. They put him on what, I don't know, whatever drugs that you put people on when they have intense pain. So they take off his boot or whatever, and then they realize that the nail had went in between his toes. Like, it didn't actually go through his foot. He thought it went through his foot. He had pain like it went through his foot. The experience of it going through his foot was a very real pain and a very real trauma that the brain told him. The other example that he gave these back to back, was someone else who he was like all alone on a construction site or something, and a nail actually did go through his hand. Like, a nail went through his hand with a nail gun or whatever. And he reported that he did not feel any pain whatsoever. No pain at all. He was alone. And, we don't know why, but he said possibly because his brain decided, like, right now you're alone. You can't deal with pain. If you have too much pain, you'll probably bleed out and die and not get help. But he was like giving examples of like how our brain processes pain, and how with the acknowledgement that we can say to ourselves and tell ourselves, like, hey, you're okay, especially dealing with mental pain, mental anguish, depression, anxiety. You're okay. Like, you're all right now. You will get through this. What are things you're grateful for? Like, basically, literally mindfulness stuff. How we can slow down, how we can regulate our body through deep breathing, through diaphragmatic breathing or meditation, for example. So he's just giving all these examples of like how we can talk to our body and tell our body what it needs to know. Because like, if that guy who the nail went through his boot, he was like, if he had stopped for a second and just talked to his body for a second, like, hey, what just happened? You're okay. I know that's a lot to ask in a moment of crisis, but this podcast episode, which I feel like I'm not explaining really well, but it was more about dealing with like mental pain and anguish, which is what I talk about a lot here: depression, anxiety, and complex PTSD and panic attacks and things like that. And I have started, before today, because I've heard about this stuff before, I have started talking to my body. But he said every athlete knows, every professional athlete who's ever done amazing things in whatever sport they're in, they know that they have to talk to their body. And he was like, it's something that the professional athlete world somehow understands, but when it comes down to like basic things like IBS or diabetes or a broken toe or whatever, somehow we've lost that science that's still true. You can still talk to your body. You can still help it to make sense of itself. And he basically just explained like the connection between your brain and these neural circuits, and how, yeah, I could go into a lot of it, but the whole point was like, that is how sacred your body is, like how it works together in sync. And when we don't acknowledge that, we like forfeit. I can't really describe. I'll have to link it. I'll have to link it if you're interested in learning more, but because it was just eye-opening to me. But basically he was saying we forfeit our ability to comfort ourselves, to heal ourselves, to self-regulate, to calm ourselves down, to help our body heal naturally. That we do all of these things in replacement of what could be actually just helping our brain to understand and realize what's going on. So I'm going to look more into the kind of work that he does, because he has people who come in with like chronic pain over 10 years or 12 years or 15 years, and they're healed in like a week, because he just helped them to help their brain realize what was happening to them. Because sometimes people like myself with these heart palpitations that I mentioned, these stress related trigger induced, panic attack induced heartaches that I have, it's not related to anything that's wrong with my heart. I've mentioned before that I have left arm pain. It's not related to anything. I thought for a little while I had a ruptured disc or something, or a broken disc. But what I thought I had, the pain doesn't just come and go. It's obviously connected to stress and trauma. Anyway, and so he's talking about those kind of instances, or like how in a civilization, like people will struggle with one thing, like a lot of people will struggle with one thing, and then 200 years, no one will struggle with that. So he was like, for example, 200 years ago, there's not that many reported cases of back pain, for example. But now, like in America, everybody's back pain. All of a sudden, he's like, what is that about? Everybody has back pain, you know? Or like in the 60s, you know, women, a lot of women were secretaries and were typing. And now everybody has carpal tunnel, but nobody had carpal tunnel back then. It's just this interesting thing. It's an interesting dynamic about how you can go through a lot of different things. He was even talking about people who have serious diagnoses like cancer and things like that, who reported getting better and who had better results with chemo and other things after they realized what they had and did. Like the more research they did, the more they learned about it, the more they realized the connection between, like, for example, gut health in the brain and things, little changes they made along the way, like just the knowledge of having some power and control and realizing that their brain will heal their body if they allow it, will help them along the journey. Anyway, it was fascinating. And I think for me, what I really took away from this whole thing about my body being sacred was just the idea of wanting to protect it more. And so there's a few things for me. It was like, one, like, I know, y'all, we know damn well, like some of the stuff, the processed food stuff we're eating, like, it's just, we know it ain't good for us. So this is not a lecture on y'all need to eat better. It's more just me thinking, like, if I see my body as sacred, then I do understand that it needs to be protected and cared for more than I give it. If I really see my body as sacred, as the house of my soul, you know, the only house that my soul has to live in, if this body ain't here, then I ain't got nowhere to live and I'm dead, right? So I was just thinking, like, what are the things that my body needs for me to communicate to it that it's sacred? And what he was saying is that when you communicate to your body that it's sacred, not just with how you eat and with movement and how you teach it to self-regulate, meditation and mindfulness and all of those things, but when you treat it like that, it actually acts as such as well. You do get less sick. You do experience less ramifications, like of different things, like even people. He was even talking about how people who get in like the same car accident, if you've had more prior traumas, you're more likely to be more hurt. If you have current stress in your life, like that's higher than the person next to you, you're more likely to endure more longer ramifications of the car accident than the person next to you who doesn't have that, who doesn't have like a traumatic childhood, or who isn't living in chronic high stress. So we can't change our past, but we can learn to heal from them, and we can take some control of where we're at now. We can treat our bodies like they are sacred, like they are the sacred bodies that we are. It just was very eye-opening to me in other ways too. It did make me think about who's around me, who I let around me, who I let in me, who I let orbit me, who's in my energy field, just period. And I talked about this on my Instagram stories today. If you follow me on Instagram, I'm at grace_sandra_. But I just got these hand tattoos today on this hand. And while I was there, like, honestly, I haven't in a really long time experienced someone whose energy was just so bad and so off, and honestly just really racist and just that I really just wanted to leave, because I was going to have them do this hand too. And I just was like, this is fine. Let's just do this and get it over with. I want to pay and get out of here. But that was me, like, probably because I had just heard that podcast episode too. I was like, like, my body is sacred. My body is sacred. My mind is sacred. My health is sacred. Like, who I'm around matters. And that's kind of a little example, but like what I was thinking today when I was thinking, I want to apply this, I was more thinking about dating and things like that. Like, who I'm around matters. I just do not want to give access in ways that I have in the past, kind of more of a willy-nilly, like, oh, sure, I'll meet you for coffee, when really I know I don't need to. You know what I mean? So that was a number one takeaway for me. But the other one was really to be mindful. And I'm not sure if y'all are here with this in terms of, well, not a lot of people are, but for me, I'm really mindful about what I watch. I do not watch anything that has rape scenes, essay scenes, violence, that is particularly violence towards women. I try to protect the sacredness of my brain space and what I know beyond a shadow of a doubt triggers me and triggers my heart and just triggers a lot of things in me. So yeah, I do the most. I really do the most. And I have done the most. But hearing that podcast today, I was like, you doing good, girl. You doing good. had to like dab myself up, like you doing good, because I've done so much to protect myself and I still need to do more. So I just want to encourage you, like, your body is sacred, your mind is sacred, your belly is sacred, your fingers are sacred, your coochie is sacred, everything is sacred. Protect yourself. Protect yourself. Don't just let anybody in here. Don't just let anybody's energy be all up around you, orbiting you. Don't just eat any old thing. Don't just let any old thing before your eyes. Like, protect yourself, because you are sacred. This is the home of your soul. So anyway, that was just on my mind today. I realized this was a little bit all over the map. I will, after I'm done here, link the video that I watched today with Gabriel Mate. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. And maybe I'll link his books too that I haven't even read yet, but I know they're going to be good because everybody loves Gabriel. Everybody who I love loves him. So I feel like I ain't even worried about it. But anyway, thank you so much for coming. And hopefully I can get back to doing lives again soon. But I just got a new job and that has really taken up a lot of time. So, but I'm loving it and I'm glad to have it. So, got to try to fit in, get in where I fit in. But love y'all. Bye.